Well, hello again and welcome back to MLR Weekly. Matt McCarthy in New York City. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show. We have co-owner of Old Glory DC, Chris Dunlavey. We have Steve Lewis back from the Rugby Town 7. Steve, of course, is a Rugby Czar in 15s and 7s. So let's get to it.
Rugby Wrap-Ups MLR Weekly brought to you by Sheehy Auto Stores. It's easy at Sheehy. The Pig and Whistle, New York City. The world's best rugby pub. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle.
Before we get to Mr. Dunlavey or Mr. Lewis, we have to take a break. Rugby Morning's Coffee Break, a recurring segment with John Fitzpatrick calling out of Washington, D.C. John, welcome back. Great to see you. What do you got?
Hey, Matt, it feels good to be back. Sorry about last week. I was down on the Chesapeake Bay catching some crabs. Matt, you know what that's all about. Johnny, roll the tape. Roll the tape.
That's just fantastic. Sophomoric and fantastic at the same time. But anywho, let's stick to the show. What do you got for us?
Yeah, let's talk about the 2024 MLR Collegiate Draft. How about Anthem RC? 4 picks in the first 13. But Matt, they took Eric Storty, center out of St. Mary's College, #1 overall. Congrats to Eric. And hey, how about a week for him? He's also part of the non-traveling reserves for USA Rugby, who take on Canada in the Pacific Nations Cup. But Matt, what do you think of Anthem RC's draft?
Well, first off, ABC, baby. Always beat Canada. Every American should be have that tattooed on their foreheads right there. ABC, hashtag ABC. That said, I think Anthem did well. 3 of the first 5 picks in the, first round, 12 picks, it's all there is. They got 3 of the first 5 after trading with DC. Curiously, DC trading down to the 12th spot. Can you explain this?
They picked up a good one there. Ray Santiago, lock flanker out of RPI. Big young guy. He's only been playing rugby for a couple of years. A few folks that are high up and know a little bit about this have high hopes for Santiago. They really think he can be an Eagle in the next 4 or 5 years. So maybe DC got the steal of the draft. But you got to look at what Anthem did. Again, you mentioned 3 picks in the first 5. Again, all of these guys that are drafting, you got to think about how they're going to make their way to the men's Eagles, right? That's the point of Anthem, and they got some good players. #2 overall, Neil Traynor. He's a hooker, played in Canada, but he is USA eligible, right? So that's something to look out for. So, and again, you also have to look at what happened last year. A lot of these MLR clubs did those short-term loans to Anthem, right? Junior Gaffa, who was drafted by New England last year, he was loaned to Anthem. So we still may see some more of that this year post the draft.
All right. I don't know if you know this, but maybe it's time for a Sheehy Auto Stores pop quiz. And it's a true or false question, John. Did you know that Raymond Santiago was the son of Julio Santiago, the most capped lock in Argentinian Puma history? True or false?
True.
Sorry, John. You lose the Sheehy Auto Stores pop quiz of the day. It's false. I made it all up. Moving on. What else you got?
Matt, what else do I have here? A couple of things. I like that Houston, they drafted another player out of Cal Berkeley. Remember, last year they drafted Max Schumacher. This year they drafted flanker Alex Aguero. Pretty cool there from Houston, sticking with some Cal Berkeley guys. Some other things other players that I want to talk about. I think the one that is really intriguing to me is, how about RFC LA? They drafted Caleb Thomasine. He's the younger brother of Stephen Thomasine from USA Men's 7. So a little Thomasine action going on there in SoCal.
Who did the best in the draft?
Well, I mean, look, Anthem had the most picks, right, with 6. So, and they went up and down the board, right, from centers to wings. Ashanti Staples. For anyone who watched that MLR Rising doc, Ashanti Staples was a guy that was featured Notre Dame College, which is now Walsh University. Fast, young, athletic. I think a lot of people like him. I will say, look, this draft was particularly deep when it came to some centers. So you saw a lot of centers come off the board. Chicago got Peyton Wall, center out of Indiana. You may know that Bryce Campbell, he played at Indiana there. So there's a little bit of that Hoosier connection. Peyton Wall is a big physical guy.
Played at Indiana.
Mm. You trying to, what are you saying? You think
I'm
Mark?
just saying, you got some big names out of that university. Maybe not on the pitch, but certainly off the pitch. Nobody's bigger than Mark Cuban. Sorry for interrupting.
No, the other player that I really like is Aaron Juma. He's a flanker out of Wheeling University. He's from Zimbabwe, so he's got that international slot right now. Perhaps he can qualify for USA after a couple of years with the tweaking of the World Rugby Reg 8 and all that nonsense. But fun player for anyone who's followed Wheeling University. I think it was just a good, fun draft, and I recommend anyone go back and watch that MLR Rising doc. You can get a lot of bio and background on some of these players, because most of the players that were drafted were featured at MLR Rising.
And John, we got you got the two major entities in college rugby. You got the CRAA and you got the NCR. CRAA is dominating the first round, but NCR's got two players in that first round, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, you're correct. Those are two that we mentioned earlier. Peyton Wall Center out of Indiana. Chicago picked him up, and then Old Glory DC picked up flanker Aaron Juma from Wheeling University.
And hopefully this kind of tightening of the competition, so to speak, will eventually lead to one college entity. We can all hope, right? We can all hope. What else you got?
Yeah, Matt, hey, quickly, how about San Diego Legion? They've hired head coach John Manetta. You may remember him. He was Australia's Sevens men's head coach. So one more head coach has been signed to MLR. Of course, Ryan Martin was brought back for New England last week.
Top notch is what we always get from you, John, and we appreciate it. But we're out of time, so we have to say goodbye. All right. On that note, we're going to break and come back with Old Glory co-owner Chris Dunlavey after this.
Digs like a demented mole there.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now.
And we are back, and we have the pleasure of once again welcoming in co-owner of Old Glory DC, Chris Dunlavey. Chris, welcome back to MLR Weekly.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning. Good to see you today.
Chris, I don't know if you'll say that at the end of this interview, because my goal is to tear you down brick by brick, as it always is, and get the controversy going and fake news. But let's start with the first things first. You're a big shot developer, which a lot of people may not know, but you're partners with a big shot car dealer guy who gets more of the glamour, he's like the backs and the forwards, that kind of thing. But do you drive a Sheehy Auto Stores car?
Ironically, I don't. I feel guilty about it all the time. But
what? How does that work?
Sheehy Auto Stores is, I believe, the largest family of dealers in the Mid-Atlantic. They have almost every car brand, except that I'm a BMW guy, and one thing they don't have is BMW. So
there you, I said good day, sir. That's the end of this interview. Thanks for coming on, Chris.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Understandable. We have different, but it's good, because that's the difference between you guys that makes it great, and that's Old Glory DC uniting the clans.
That's right.
That's what it
Absolutely.
does. It's got nothing to do that you was with your arch rival and you're with the Washington Irish. I know that.
Now we're both old, very proud DC area club guys, and it's like everything else in rugby. You're brutal rivals on the pitch, but off the pitch, we're brothers, and that's how our whole community works down here.
All right. Well, let's get to it. First up, I wanted to talk to you about the draft, and I know that you're not in the draft headquarters. You're doing the other stuff, but John Fitzpatrick and I just looked at your pick. You traded down to the number 12 pick, and you got Raymond Santiago out of RPI. We could argue that that's the steal of the draft.
I think we got very lucky in the way the draft panned out for us. We were actually thinking we were going into this draft with a relatively limited number of picks, and had the good fortune to get approached by a couple teams literally on draft day that gave us an opportunity to make trades down and increase the number of picks we had, and feel really, really good about the quality of talent we're coming out with. Our whole philosophy at Old Glory is that we're doing everything we can to build and win with American domestic talent. And of course, the college draft is one of the best ways to do that. Although, the really top quality collegiate programs in the U.S. are few in number, there are still tremendous talents that can be drafted and brought into the MLR. We've had experiences like Colin Gross, who we drafted and he was starting for us the first game of the following season, and has made a real mark on Old Glory and MLR since then. So we're expecting that we're gonna get some real value out of the picks we made in this draft, and really advance our vision of building the most American team in MLR.
Well, you've got yet another young, exciting American scrum half. In the second round, you took Aiden Ridgway out of Arkansas State. So you got some competition there in camp for that scrum half position.
Yes, it's really, I think this offseason is really about building depth and competition in our squad, both our draft and the new guys we've been signing onto the squad or targeting to are all about, it's not really about filling gaps we had, because we feel really good about the team we had and think we've got strong performance in every spot. But of course, every team to get better needs to focus on depth and competition. And I think you're right. We've got great competition with great young Americans at our scrum half spot, as well as everything else across the board. So it's feeling like things are really moving in the right direction as far as our roster goes.
Well, for a bounce of the ball, your roster could have been in the final. I mean, you played, arguably you're the second best team in the league because you played New England so well. And again, that bounce of the ball, you could have been 3-0 versus New England.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I told the team at our year-end banquet, I know that they know that there's no team that was left in the playoffs that we couldn't have beaten. And I think you're right. I think we played the ultimate champions really tight. During the regular season, we split with them in our home and away series. Those are both 1-point games. We each won in each other's venues, and certainly that playoff game could well have gone our way at the end there, and was feeling great, even though we were playing in their house. So we think we're really close, Matt, and we're feeling like the next 2 years are going to be really exciting time to be an Old Glory fan.
All right, hold the phone for 1 second, because we got to take a quick break.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
All right, let's talk some broader strokes league-wide. What's your thought process on the number of international slots that should be on a match day 23?
I think our thought is that the league is generally moving in the direction of developing more domestic talent based on some of the ways we've structured our incentives. Every team is different. And as I said, Paul Sheehy and I and Old Glory are very committed to making sure that we win with American talent. And other teams just don't necessarily embrace the same philosophy. I mean, there are others that would stockpile all the international spots they can if they were able to, through trades and other actions do so. And it really is an interesting clash of approach. Some of us feel like we're about building the quality of rugby in the U.S. Others feel like we're about just highlighting our sport with the best athletes we can draw from wherever they are in the world. And I think you'll continue to see that tension in the league over the next few years. For us, we're going to be diminishing the number of international spots we use over time. Should others be obliged to do so as a rule across the league? I think
you do have that argument, and I've mentioned it on camera before. We do have that argument about it's capitalism and it's American professional sports landscape, right? So
yeah,
if I'm
exactly
a New York Mets
right.
fan specifically, I don't care if the guy is green from Martian if he can hit.
Yeah, exactly right.
If he can hit, right?
Yeah. And as a league, we are doing things like our partnering with World Rugby and USA Rugby on Anthem, creating a whole team for the development of that USA Rugby pathway. I think we've got incentives built into our grassroots programs and our draft that help to give a real emphasis to development of Americans. So I think we're moving in the right direction as a whole. And I feel like the nuances of exactly what the league's rule on game day roster is not stopping that from happening. So we feel good about that.
You could also make the argument too that the more Americans that you have that maybe even have a local fan base or family base or went to college in that area would pull people into the stands to watch them play.
It brings a host of benefits
from overseas.
Yeah, it brings a host of benefits, Matt. You're exactly right. Local and homegrown fans players tend to bring a fan base with them. We've had players who come out for games and have, 20, just family members, 20 people in the stands. And then, of course, the broader fan base starts to develop followings for individual players. But also, frankly, on the cost efficiency side, if we're not having to fly players from or fly fewer from New Zealand or Scotland to be here for the season, if we're not paying for the visa attorney costs, and I mean it's a whole different kind of cost structure that makes it easier to get a good return on investment for a domestic player.
Now, mentioned earlier that you're a big shot developer, which a lot of people might not know, buildings, stadiums, etc. What's on the horizon for Old Glory DC? And I love the Maryland Soccerplex, but it's not downtown DC. Is there something in the works that we can talk about?
Yeah, so we love the Soccerplex. It is by a good measure, we think, that the best pitch in MLR, the quality of the turf that we play on.
I'd agree.
Every visiting team comes and comments on it, and it's a beautiful game environment where our fans can sit on grassy berms to watch the game as well as in the stands, and it's just a very pleasant environment to present our game in. We do continue to get feedback from our fans that a more central location in our region is ideally in the District of Columbia, which all of our professional sports teams are named after in our region, would be desirable. So we are in discussions on pursuing a project that may facilitate that. I think it's fair to say we're going to be at the Soccerplex for the foreseeable future. We don't have a deal in hand yet, but we think we do have a beat on a great opportunity that we'd love to be announcing on your show, Matt, in the months to come.
All right, sounds good. So, but in the meantime, the Maryland Soccerplex, we saw it was an exciting venue. That NOLA game was great. I had the pleasure of being there. That was a great vibe. So, It's a great place for fans to walk around. There's multiple pitches that other games can be being played on prior or part of an event weekend. It's a good place. So fans should get out there. Final note, I just wanted to salute you guys on the pickup of Jason Emery.
Thank you.
From LA. Guy's a great playmaker. He plays multiple positions, and he's great in the clubhouse and off the pitch. So I know him from New York very well. Great pickup. Sneaky pickup there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a perfect example of what we're trying to do this off season. There wasn't a gap we were looking to fill, but boy, that's a talent that adds a lot in dynamic gameplay and fulfilling all the roles we need him to. So look to see a lot of him on the pitch for Old Glory this year.
How many teams in the MLR next year?
So my answer is 12. We do have a number of markets where we're starting to get some active discussions we're hearing around potential new additions to the league. I don't. Chris Dunlavey personally doesn't think any of those are going to materialize.
Are you speaking in the third person, sir?
Yes, I am. I don't personally think that we're going to have any of those realized before the 25 season, but more likely for 26. So we're 12 for this year.
How about Tampa?
I know some people that are working real hard on that, and it's an interesting market. So I'll look forward to seeing what they're able to put together.
All right, Mr. Chris Dunlavey, thank you for your time once again.
Thank you, Matt. Always good to talk to you.
We'll be right back with Steve Lewis after this.
I wouldn't like to be at the bottom of that.
Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained?
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
And we're back with Steve Lewis. And Steve, you can tell that I'm not in the studio. I'm on vacation in the Poconos or the Catskills, I'm not sure. And you're just back from Rugby Town, USA, back in New York City. I don't know how long the Wi-Fi is going to hold up, so let's get on with it. Give us a skinny on the Rugby Town Sevens.
Once again, the best organized, best run, and most competitive sevens tournament in the Americas, hands down. Fantastic weekend of rugby, quality going up again. You know, you pick a team, you think we're good to go this year, we get a good chance of winning this, then you start to look at other rosters, and it's really the quality just goes up every year, year upon year. So good tournament. Denver came out tops. They struggled to get through the qualifying phase, but it got better as the weekend went on. So full credit to them and a good bunch of guys. I was there with the Jesters, a good friend David Barry, and helping the other good friend Mobsy to coach the Jesters. We had a star-studded team, and we made third. We lost to Denver in the semis, but lost a couple of players in the quarters. But again, full credit to Denver. Fantastic tournament.
Well, for you lived in Denver for quite some time, and the Homers won the tournament. But also, you mentioned David Barry. He is partial owner of the New England Free Jacks, for the folks at home that didn't know that. And this tournament was chock full of MLR players trying to do the sevens thing. What was your assessment overall of the 15s players from the MLR playing in the sevens tournament?
Well, I think most of them will put their hand up and admit they struggled. You can throw in altitude as a factor at Denver, but there's just no question about the different levels of fitness required. And so MLR guys, for the most part, struggled.
Well, that can be kind of, a testament to their training for 15s rather than sevens and having to turn it around in a quick turnaround after the end of the MLR season, perhaps?
Yeah, it was two things. One, MLR season for most teams finished earlier, right? Unless you were in the final. So most of them have been having a well-earned rest, and that's fine. Some have been off for 4 or 6 weeks. It is a completely different aerobic requirement, and most of those guys could go 4, 5, 6 minutes. They weren't going 10, 12, 14.
And these are what we would consider pretty well-conditioned athletes that we're talking about. So that just kind of underscores how much of a freak Antoine Dupont in France was this year.
Yeah, it's there's no question. It's an adjustment in terms of basically aerobic. You don't get the breaks you get in 15s. You don't get kick and a touch. You don't get rucks that last longer than 1 second, 2 seconds, you know. So they definitely struggled. We had some free jacks on our side. Wayne Vanderbank, MLR MVP, he actually played very well. It's just a tough man to put down whatever format he's playing in. And we also had Paula Balakana and Morgan, Dania and Morgan Putarangi from the free jack. So we had our fair complement. And they were littered throughout pretty much every other side. There were MLR players there. But yeah, not an easy transition for them and not wholly successful on most of their parts.
So you mentioned the term littered with MLR players. Are you insinuating, sir, that they played like garbage?
That's a bit strong. It's a bit harsh, but they're not as effective as Condition 7's players.
Okay. All right. Cagey and diplomatic as always, the czar that is Steve Lewis. Steve, what about the MLR draft?
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, from a National Collegiate Rugby perspective, NCR, there were a couple of players went in the first round. Ray Santiago, kind of a local product was with New York for a long time, so I had tabs on him. We would have gone for him if New York was still alive, but he went to DC. Also a kid out of Indiana. So NCR players, I mean, there are diamonds in the rough, right? The CRAA teams are the better teams qualitatively, and everyone knows those players, but there are definitely good pickings to be had when you go to NCR and look at the volume of players and the quality of players in smaller colleges.
Steve, do you see that these players making that first round in this draft is maybe a pathway to a unified college landscape? Maybe the CRAA and NCR get together because maybe the talent is starting to get equal here?
I don't think the talent's equal yet, again, qualitatively, but it's really a separate issue. I don't think it really affects the MLR. The MLR draft has any effect on that relationship. I think that relationship needs to heal. I think NCR, and I'm on the board, have been explicit about extending all the branches and wanting to be part of the larger USA Rugby family. That has not been reciprocated, and hopefully that gets sorted out because we all need to be under one roof and we all need to be cooperating, and that's what the game in this country needs.
Yeah, sponsors, networks, advertisers, all of it. We need to be under one umbrella, everybody. So let's get it done. But we've eliminated quite a few of the acronyms, and now we're down to just basically 2, which is a good thing. Steve, before I let you go, any rumors that you heard circulating about the MLR out there in the bars and the pubs of Glendale/Denver?
Yes.
Come on, man. Give us something. What did you hear?
No, I have to tune out to get any knowledge nowadays. I have to tune into Rugby Wrap Up. That's the primary fount of information.
And of course, Rugby Wrap Up is, of course, the platform for shows like MLR Weekly, College Rugby Wrap Up, and the Rugby Yards.
The hardest working man in U.S. rugby media. I'm looking at him. Not the best looking, but the hardest working man.
It wears on your looks.
I think you've touched on most of them before, so nothing new to add.
All right, well, Stephen, on that note, we are out of time, sir. So I want to thank you for coming on MLR Weekly.
Thank you, Matt. Watch out for those critters and bears in the wood and all the other stuff. You're not on the Upper West Side now, pal. You're not safe.
You're preaching to the choir here. I was petrified, and so was the dog last night when we were outside the cabin. But on that note, thank you to Mr. Steve Lewis of elevate-rugby.com, Mr. John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, Chris Dunlavey, co-owner of Old Glory DC, and thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other programs, including the critically acclaimed The Rugby Odds. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, sign up for our weekly newsletter, tell your friends about us, and please join our American Red Cross blood donor team.